The late 90s were a genuinely weird time for RPGs. Budgets were climbing, CD-ROMs made developers feel invincible, and teams were throwing ideas at the wall. If you dig them up now, almost every single one of them was trying something that would never get greenlit today. Let's look into some of these experimental sci-fi RPGs from that era. Abomination: The Nemesis Project is a 1999 real-time tactical game where a bioplague has wiped out most of the US. A religious death cult controls the ruins, and a grotesque superorganism is growing underneath everything. You command 8 genetically enhanced operatives where each one has a unique ability, across procedurally generated city maps that supposedly combine into over 1 million possible configurations. A city overview shows faithful territory bleeding red across the map, shrinking as you take missions and push them back. The lead designer worked on XCOM Terror from the Deep, and the box mentions it 3 times in case you somehow missed the implication. Here's the thing though, it doesn't play like it at all. It's real-time, way closer to Syndicate Wars than anything turn-based. And look, the soundtrack is legitimately unsettling. The creature designs are disturbing, and the descriptive writing does real atmospheric work. The concept is genuinely great. The AI is where it all goes wrong. Agents will stand next to enemies and do nothing. Combat turns into frantic clicking and hoping for the best. Characters you've carefully equipped and positioned will ignore threats 2 steps away while you frantically pause and redirect them. Every time the game threatens to deliver on what it's promising, the AI reminds you it can't. The concept here is still largely untouched territory. It just never had the execution to match it.
Deprived.
This Blade Runner game is not a retelling of the film. It runs alongside it. You play a different Blade Runner, working a different case in the same rainy city on the same nights. You can actually miss meeting Rachel and Tyrell entirely if you don't talk to your captain at exactly the right moment. A licensed game from 1997 that baked in that kind of missable content. The mechanic that makes this genuinely special is randomization. Every new playthrough, the game quietly decides which characters are replicants and which are humans. You might be a replicant. The game tracks your behavior and nudges the answer. 13 endings branch from all of this. In the original film, cast came back. Frank Klepacki rebuilt the Vangelis score entirely by ear because the master recordings weren't available. Fair warning though, the Voight Camp sequences are tedious in practice. You're basically clicking 3 buttons and watching an arbitrary meter, and the story loses its thread a few times. Also, the source code was lost when they moved offices, which is why there's no remaster since. Fans had to reverse engineer the engine before it finally hit GOG in 2019. That dedication alone should tell you how good the core game is. Okay, so Omicron: The Nomad Soul opens with a police officer from a dying cyberpunk city breaking through dimensions to literally talk to you. Not your character, but you, the person at the keyboard. He needs your soul. And that fourth wall break isn't just a gimmick. It's baked into the entire design. When your host body dies, you don't get a game over. You possess a new NPC. The city keeps running around you, while you dig into a serial killer conspiracy that unravels into demonic forces, a ruling supercomputer, and an ancient entity harvesting human souls from other dimensions. Now, here's the thing. David Bowie was genuinely involved. Not just a cameo. He composed 10 original songs, voiced a character, and physically spent 2 weeks in Paris with the team working on the design. You can find his character performing concerts in seedy bars across the city, which itself is stunning for the era. A dense, domed cyberpunk metropolis the hardware absolutely could not keep up with. And that's the catch with this. There are 3 gameplay modes: third-person adventure, one-on-one fighting, first-person shooter, and none of them are particularly good. The controls are rough, the loading times will test you, and the open-world vision was ahead of what was technically possible. But the atmosphere, the premise, and the sheer audacity of what it was attempting, this was GTA 3's conceptual ancestor, and it came out 2 years before it.
I was wondering wondering when you two would
Hell, a cyberpunk thriller was made in 1994 by the same team that became Take-Two Interactive. Washington, D.C. in 2095 is a theocratic fascist state. VR, comics, music is banned. Basically anything resembling joy is illegal. You play either of a pair of ARC officers who discover their own organization has put them on the termination list. It's a point-and-click adventure built around a genuinely interesting political setup. The cast is the whole marketing angle. Dennis Hopper voices Mr. Beautiful, and he goes fully in. Grace Jones, Jeffrey Holder, and Stephanie Seymour also appear. Hopper is honestly the only performer who matches the material consistently. And buried inside the cheese, there's a legitimately sharp idea. They banned virtual reality technology and then secretly used it to build the hell it promises its citizens. When it reveals its twists, it lands well. But here's the reality check. The puzzle design is obsessed with passwords and codes to a self-destructive degree. Every locked door and computer needs a specific word or sequence that might be in dialogue you already passed, or just cryptic for no reason. The tone swings between bleak political horror and broad comedy. Pre-render models are stiff, cutscenes run long, and the interface is a drag. The truth is, it's a game drowning in its own ambition, which honestly makes it a perfect closer for this list.
Didn't get through to your receptors.
BioForge's internal development title was Interactive Movie 1, which tells you exactly what Origin Systems thought they were making. The pitch was no FMV cutscenes, just motion capture animation, fixed camera angles over pre-rendered environments, and an entire story told through datapads and journals. You wake up as an amnesiac cyborg on an alien moon. The diaries scattered around you slowly build the picture. A religious cult who believe in human perfection through cybernetics, a dead alien race whose technology is being weaponized, and a scientist running experiments with zero oversight. The gameplay is essentially alone in the dark in a sci-fi horror shell. Tank controls, numpad combat with distinct punch and kick combinations, lasers that ricochet off walls. It sounds rough, and honestly the controls do need adjustment, but the atmosphere this thing builds is genuinely impressive. And here's a detail that's hard not to love. The physical game manual shipped with a dossier of possible patient identities, because the game reveals who you actually are near the end based on how you played. The sequel got canceled after a rushed 10-week beta when they ran into financial trouble, which is a real shame because the story was promising. What you're left with is a game that built the cinematic action RPG template. Some sequences are punishing without explanation, and the combat never fully clicks. But the atmosphere is what you're after. Sentient is a 1997 Psygnosis game where you play a medic assigned to a solar mining station, which is slowly drifting into the sun. The station has over 60 crew members, all running on independent AI. They work, argue, move between locations, and spread information to each other. When something happens on the station, NPCs react to it and tell other NPCs about it, and gossip propagates. Characters who have never spoken to you have opinions about you based on what they've heard. The game simulates a functioning workplace. This was completely unprecedented for NPC behavior. The conversation system is built from 48 modular statements and questions you assemble into natural-sounding sentences. You can ask anyone anything, adjust your facial expression while talking, and even send one crew member to deliver a message to another. 12 different endings branch out of the overlapping subplots. The problem is execution. Getting the specific question you need out of the nested menu system often takes 5 or 6 elections, and sometimes the menu structure makes a necessary question physically impossible to form even when the answer is standing right in front of you. The game deliberately moves slowly. What Sentient was trying to do is genuinely fascinating in concept. Whether you have fun playing it is a completely separate question. BloodNet drops you into Manhattan 2094 as a freelance mercenary who just got bitten by a vampire. You have a ticking clock before the transformation becomes permanent, a city of recruitable contacts to build a party from, and a separate cyberspace dimension to navigate using code words. This team later became Take-Two Interactive, and honestly, nothing else in 1993 was attempting this particular genre collision. Gothic horror mythology soldered directly on his cyberpunk. Character creation works through personality questions instead of stat allocation, so you start with a different protagonist every time. The visuals are deliberately surreal, with portraits and backgrounds that don't match in scale or tone, giving the whole thing a genuinely dreamlike quality rather than just looking inconsistent. The blood-drinking mechanic as an actual survival management system was territory nobody else was in. Here's the reality, though. Combat falls apart badly in the late game. Enemies stop being avoidable and suddenly require sustained damage output your party can't sustain without grinding you never knew you needed to do. The cyberspace dimension is a great idea that never gets fully developed, and the plot is loose enough that losing the thread entirely is a real possibility. Since the setting is specific enough and strange enough, nothing before or since has quite landed in the same place. Septerra Core is one of those games that genuinely should not exist. An American studio in Bellevue, Washington, spent years building a JRPG from scratch in 1999. The score was composed by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, who went on to write the Halo soundtrack. Steve Downes, the voice of Master Chief, has a minor role. The world is 7-layered continental shells orbiting a living biocomputer core. Each shell has its own culture, visual identity, and place in a mythology. What separated it from the Japanese console RPGs it was clearly drawing from was the conversation system. Instead of clicking through preset dialogue, you select topics to discuss with NPCs. Party composition changed what was available. Some characters only spoke frankly to specific party members, and bringing the wrong person could close off entire conversations. Now look, the slow combat animations are a real problem. Some enemy attacks pad every fight with dead seconds that add up. Navigation is poor, and some dungeons run way too long. The game justifies itself by its extraordinary world building inside systems that didn't always have the muscle to carry it. Gorky 17 came out of Metropolis Software, Poland's first video game studio. The setup is 3 NATO specialists sent into a sealed Polish military complex where biological experiments went catastrophically wrong. And the game structure doesn't map cleanly onto any single genre. Real-time top-down adventure for exploration, turn-based isometric tactical combat for every encounter, all 28 of which are handcrafted and scripted at fixed locations. The weapon system is what gives the tactical layer real teeth. Rifles only fire in 4 cardinal directions. Pistols fire diagonally. Shotguns have limited range. So before every fight, you have to think about which geometric relationship you need to be in before you can even shoot. Resources are scarce. Losing anyone means restarting the battle. The creature designs are genuinely unsettling, and the horror atmosphere stays consistent throughout. Also worth knowing, this studio was eventually bought by CD Projekt in 2008, which is a fun piece of lineage trivia. The game runs about 10 to 15 hours, and the RPG depth is pretty thin. Experience points go into a small stat pool with limited build options. Voice acting is rough, and some story threads just get dropped. But honestly, the tactical design is tight enough that none of that kills it. It plays like a survival horror game that someone decided to run on a turn-based engine, and the encounter design punches way above the budget.
Poor bastard.
Albion is a 1995 German RPG from Blue Byte, built by former The Lion Software devs who'd been making Amiga RPGs for years. The setup is hard sci-fi. A corporate mining ship arrives at a planet classified as barren, and shuttle pilot crash lands to find it teeming with a Celtic human civilization and a cat-like alien race. As the world opens up, it becomes clear the planet itself has something like spiritual intelligence, and the conflict between the mining corporation's technology and native magic isn't metaphorical. They're physically incompatible systems operating on different principles. 5 perspective modes shift depending on where you are. First-person 3D in dungeons and cities. Top-down 2D on overland maps. Different scale for different contexts. NPCs run on daily schedules. Almost everything is pickable. Hunger and encumbrance are tracked. And the party is entirely predefined by fixed characters with actual personalities who react to each other and the world around them. In 1995, Western RPGs almost universally let you create your own party. Albion's cast of characters approach was way closer to what BioWare would build. Combat is slow and grindy, even by the standards of its own year, and some dungeon sections will genuinely test your patience. The interface fights you at every step, but the cultures feel thought through rather than just decorated, and there's a thematic tension between technology and nature that the game actually earns.